Seduction, Robert Greene reminds us, is not about tricks, pickup lines, or shallow manipulation. It is about power over attention, and attention is the most valuable currency of the modern world. In an age where everyone is shouting to be seen, on social media, in business, in politics, in relationships, the person who understands how to draw others in without force quietly rises above the noise. The ancient philosophers understood this long before algorithms existed. Lao Tzu wrote, "The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid." Seduction operates on this same invisible axis. It does not conquer by aggression, it attracts by resonance. Greene opens our eyes to a truth many resist. Human beings are not purely rational creatures. We like to believe we make decisions based on logic, values, or principles, but history repeatedly exposes another reality. People follow those who make them feel understood, desired, elevated, or emotionally alive. From Cleopatra captivating Roman generals to Steve Jobs enthralling audiences with product launches that felt like theatrical events rather than corporate presentations, seduction has always shaped outcomes far beyond romance. It determines who gets promoted, who gains loyalty, who builds cult-like followings, and who fades into irrelevance. The modern world gives us countless examples. Consider how certain public figures command massive followings, not because of superior policies or credentials, but because they speak in ways that activate identity and emotion. They frame their presence as rare, misunderstood, or visionary. This is not accidental. Seduction begins with self-mastery, the ability to shape how others experience you, rather than reacting impulsively to how they treat you. Greene emphasizes that those who are easily predictable, emotionally transparent, or desperate for approval lose their seductive power. Mystery, restraint, and intentional presence create gravity. If you love powerful, insightful, and life-changing books, then you found the right channel. Every week, we break down the ideas that transform mindsets, elevate success, and shift lives. So don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you'll want to catch every book we review. Let's continue. At the heart of seduction lies a paradox. The most seductive individuals are often those who do not appear to need validation. They project wholeness. When people sense this inner completeness, curiosity awakens. Why is this person calm when others are frantic? Why do they seem selective rather than eager? The American business landscape offers a striking example. Think of how luxury brands operate. They do not beg customers to buy. They limit access, control narrative, and elevate experience. The scarcity itself seduces. Greene teaches that humans are drawn to what feels just out of reach, because desire intensifies in the presence of distance. This principle extends deeply into personal development. Many people fail not because they lack talent, intelligence, or work ethic, but because they repel rather than attract. They overshare, over-explain, over-pursue. Greene argues that seduction requires emotional intelligence, the ability to read the unspoken needs of others. People are not seduced by what you want from them, but by what you awaken within them. When you understand someone's hidden insecurities, ambitions, and longings, you can position yourself as the answer to a question they have not yet articulated. We see this play out globally in leadership and influence. Nelson Mandela, for instance, did not seduce through flamboyance or aggression. His power lay in restraint, moral authority, and an almost unsettling calm in the face of injustice. That calm created trust, and trust opened hearts. Greene's work makes it clear that seduction is not inherently immoral. It becomes dangerous only when divorced from ethics. Used consciously, it allows individuals to navigate human dynamics without force, manipulation, or fear. Another uncomfortable truth Greene explores is that people often desire to be led, not controlled, but gently guided. In romantic contexts, this means creating emotional safety while maintaining individuality. In professional contexts, it means inspiring rather than micromanaging. In creative fields, it means offering a vision others want to belong to. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once said, "To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself." Seduction, at its highest level, is daring to express a controlled version of your essence without collapsing into neediness. As the book unfolds, Greene subtly shifts the reader's perspective from external tactics to internal alignment. The most powerful seducers are not those who memorize strategies, but those who understand themselves deeply enough to be deliberate. They know their strengths, their shadows, their emotional rhythms. This self-knowledge allows them to remain composed while others chase attention recklessly. In today's attention economy, where creators, entrepreneurs, and professionals compete globally, this distinction is everything. The lesson quietly forming beneath these insights is transformative. If you want to influence the world, you must first master how you are perceived, not through deception, but through intentional presence. Seduction begins the moment you stop trying to convince and start allowing others to discover. It is the art of invitation, not pursuit.
And this is only the beginning, because once attraction is established, the deeper challenge emerges, not how to draw people in, but how to sustain desire without possession, how to remain magnetic without becoming predictable, and how to wield influence without losing integrity. If Part 1 revealed that seduction begins with attention and self-mastery, Part 2 moves deeper into the emotional architecture that sustains desire. Attraction may open the door, but it is emotional tension that keeps people inside the room. Greene makes it clear that human beings do not fall under influence because they are impressed. They do so because they feel something unresolved, a pull that keeps their imagination engaged. The mind, when left with unanswered questions, becomes an accomplice to desire. One of the most profound insights Greene offers is that people are rarely drawn to who you are in full disclosure. They are drawn to who they think you might be. This is why mystery has power. Mystery does not mean deception, it means selective revelation. In modern culture, oversharing is rewarded with momentary attention but punished with long-term boredom. Social media provides a daily laboratory for this principle. Creators who document every thought and emotion often burn out their audience, while those who curate moments, themes, and silences create anticipation. The same dynamic applies in leadership, romance, and business. Steve Jobs was famously private, revealing products and ideas only when the moment was right. That restraint amplified impact. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche observed, "Everything profound loves a mask." Greene echoes this idea, not as a call to falseness, but as a reminder that identity is layered. When you reveal everything at once, you leave no space for imagination. Seduction thrives in that space. It allows others to participate emotionally, to project hopes, meanings, and desires onto you. This is not manipulation when done ethically, it is an understanding of how human perception works. As desire builds, Greene introduces another subtle but critical idea. People want to feel chosen, not chased. When someone senses they are being pursued aggressively, value diminishes. When they feel selectively seen, value increases. This is why the most effective influencers, negotiators, and leaders never appear desperate for approval. They listen more than they speak. They respond rather than react. They create the feeling that engagement is mutual, not extracted. Consider how elite universities, exclusive firms, or high-end brands operate globally. They rarely advertise aggressively. Instead, they allow reputation, narrative, and selective access to do the work. People do not simply want what is good, they want what signals meaning and distinction. Greene argues that seduction is fundamentally about raising someone's self-perception. When people feel elevated in your presence, smarter, more seen, more alive, they associate that feeling with you. This is where empathy becomes power. True seduction requires the ability to read emotional undercurrents, boredom, insecurity, ambition, loneliness. In the American workplace, leaders who succeed long-term are often those who understand that productivity follows meaning. Employees do not give discretionary effort because of salary alone. They do so when they feel valued and part of something larger. Globally, movements succeed not because of data alone, but because they tap into identity and belonging. This is why storytelling remains the most powerful tool across cultures. Greene also warns of a common mistake, trying to seduce by mirroring too much. While familiarity creates comfort, excess sameness kills intrigue. The seductive individual balances familiarity with contrast. They align with shared values while introducing a perspective that feels fresh. This is evident in creative industries where innovation often comes from those who respect tradition but subtly disrupt it. Think of how Apple entered established markets not by rejecting existing technology outright, but by reframing it around simplicity and human experience. As desire deepens, another lesson emerges: control your emotional tempo. Those who rush intimacy, whether emotional or strategic, often sabotage desire. Greene highlights the importance of pacing. Desire intensifies when it unfolds gradually, when moments are spaced enough to allow longing to grow. In relationships, this means not collapsing boundaries too quickly. In business, it means not revealing your entire strategy prematurely. Timing, Greene insists, is not an accessory, it is the engine. The ancient Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who has power over himself has power over the world." Emotional regulation is seductive because it signals strength. People trust those who do not panic, overshare, or overreact. In times of crisis, whether financial downturns, political instability, or personal loss, individuals gravitate towards those who remain centered. Calm becomes charisma. Yet Greene does not romanticize seduction as effortless elegance. He acknowledges that it requires discipline. You must resist the urge to seek immediate validation. You must tolerate uncertainty. You must allow others to move towards you rather than pulling them closer. This restraint separates those who merely attract attention from those who command loyalty. A global example can be seen in diplomacy. Nations that rely solely on coercion often face resistance, while those that combine strength with cultural influence, education, art, values, extend their reach quietly. This soft power, as political theorists call it, is seduction on a civilizational scale. It demonstrates Greene's central argument: influence sustained by desire outlasts influence enforced by fear. As Part 2 closes, the reader begins to see seduction not as something you do to others, but as a state you cultivate. It emerges from clarity, patience, empathy, and restraint. It is the art of being compelling without pleading, present without pressure, and confident without domination. But this raises a deeper question, perhaps the most dangerous one. Once people are drawn in, how do you avoid becoming trapped by their expectations? How do you maintain power without losing yourself? And how do you prevent seduction from turning into dependency, resentment, or control? That is where the art becomes more complex and more ethical.
By the time attraction has been established and emotional tension sustained, Greene turns our attention to a far more subtle and dangerous terrain: power dynamics. This is where many fail, not because they lack charm, but because they misunderstand what seduction ultimately tests. Seduction is not proven when someone desires you. It is proven when desire does not turn into control, dependency, or self-betrayal. The highest form of seduction, Greene suggests, is one that preserves freedom, both yours and theirs. Human beings have a natural tendency to confuse attention with attachment. Once they feel seen and emotionally engaged, they unconsciously want stability, reassurance, and certainty. But certainty kills desire. Greene exposes this paradox gently yet relentlessly. People crave intensity, but they suffocate under possession. This is why many relationships, careers, and movements collapse after early success. The very force that attracted others becomes diluted when boundaries disappear. The seductive individual understands this instinctively. They offer presence without suffocation, warmth without dependence. They allow others to come closer while retaining an inner independence. This is not coldness, it is balance. The philosopher Epictetus captured this tension when he wrote, "If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one can enslave you by what you desire." Greene builds on this idea by showing that those who lose themselves in the need to be liked, needed, or adored ultimately lose influence. Modern culture offers countless cautionary examples. Think of public figures who rise quickly through charisma and relatability, only to fall when constant exposure erodes mystique. Oversharing turns admiration into familiarity, and familiarity into disappointment. The same pattern appears in business partnerships, creative collaborations, and leadership roles. When leaders over-identify with approval, they compromise judgment. When they cling too tightly, loyalty turns into resentment. Greene emphasizes that seduction requires emotional autonomy. You must be able to walk away, not dramatically, not cruelly, but internally. The ability to detach calmly is profoundly attractive because it signals strength. People sense when you are not dependent on their reaction. This detachment allows you to remain generous without becoming depleted, engaged without becoming owned. Globally, we see this principle at work in negotiation and diplomacy. The most effective negotiators are those who remain flexible but not needy, open but not desperate. In American business culture, founders who build enduring companies often resist the temptation to please everyone. They stay aligned with a vision, even at the cost of short-term popularity. That steadiness creates trust, and trust deepens influence. Another crucial lesson emerges here. Seduction is sustained through contrast, not consistency alone. Predictability creates comfort, but contrast creates excitement. This does not mean emotional games, it means maintaining layers. Greene encourages a rhythm of presence and absence, engagement and withdrawal, not to manipulate but to prevent stagnation. Desire feeds on movement. When everything is always available, nothing feels valuable. This principle mirrors nature itself. Seasons change, tides rise and fall. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus observed, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." Seduction honors this truth. It allows relationships, roles, and identities to evolve rather than fossilize. Those who insist on permanence often end up accelerating decline. As power dynamics intensify, Greene introduces a sobering warning. Never seduce out of emptiness. When seduction is used to fill a void, loneliness, insecurity, lack of purpose, it becomes predatory or self-destructive. True seduction flows from abundance, not lack. It is an expression of inner richness, not a plea for validation. This distinction separates influence from exploitation. We see the consequences of ignoring this lesson everywhere. Influencers chasing relevance burn out. Leaders addicted to admiration compromise values. Individuals who define themselves solely through others lose clarity. Greene's work quietly urges the reader to build a life so grounded that seduction becomes an extension of identity, not a crutch. At this stage, seduction transforms into presence with boundaries. You listen deeply, but you do not dissolve. You inspire, but you do not dominate. You attract, but you do not entrap. This balance creates respect, and respect is the soil in which lasting influence grows. As Part 3 closes, a deeper realization settles in. Seduction is not about winning people over. It is about creating a dynamic where people willingly return, not because they are hooked, but because they feel alive, respected, and expanded in your presence. What remains is the final and most challenging dimension, the ethical responsibility of influence. Once you understand how human desire works, how attention is captured, and how power circulates between people, neutrality disappears. Knowledge itself becomes power, and power always asks a question of character. The seductive individual must decide not only how to influence, but why.
History offers a clear warning. Charisma without conscience corrodes both the seducer and the seduced. We have seen leaders, gurus, and icons rise on waves of devotion only to collapse under the weight of manipulation and ego. Greene does not moralize. Instead, he exposes consequences. Influence gained through deception eventually breeds distrust. Desire, cultivated through illusion, decays into disillusionment. What begins as admiration turns into anger when people realize their emotional investment was exploited. The philosopher Immanuel Kant insisted that people must be treated as ends in themselves, never merely as means. Greene's work, when read deeply, aligns with this principle. The highest form of seduction does not reduce others to tools, it expands their sense of self. When people leave your presence feeling more capable, more aware, more alive, your influence becomes regenerative rather than extractive. This distinction matters profoundly in the modern world. In the age of algorithms, attention is monetized, emotions are engineered, and outrage is profitable. The temptation to use seductive power irresponsibly is everywhere, from clickbait media to manipulative marketing to performative leadership. Yet the figures who endure, who remain respected across time, are those who refuse short-term exploitation in favor of long-term trust. Consider global examples of enduring influence. Figures like Oprah Winfrey built massive followings not by feeding insecurity, but by amplifying possibility. Her power came from emotional attunement paired with ethical restraint. In business, companies that prioritize trust, such as those known for customer-centric values, outlast competitors who rely solely on hype. In personal relationships, the people we remember most vividly are not those who dazzled us briefly, but those who made us feel seen without diminishing us. Greene also addresses a quiet danger, the seducer's own ego. Mastery can intoxicate. When people respond to you, admire you, seek you out, it becomes easy to confuse influence with superiority. This is the moment where seduction collapses inward. True mastery requires humility, the understanding that influence is temporary and relational, not a permanent crown. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warned, power over others is weakness disguised as strength. Greene echoes this truth by emphasizing that sustainable seduction does not rely on dominance, it relies on mutual elevation. The moment you need others to feel small for you to feel powerful, you have already lost control of yourself. Another essential insight emerges here. The most seductive presence is one that liberates. People return not because they are trapped, but because they are free to leave. This freedom creates authenticity. It strips seduction of fear and replaces it with respect. Whether in leadership, creativity, or love, the ability to say you are not bound to me paradoxically strengthens bonds. Globally, this principle appears in the most resilient cultures and institutions. Systems built on coercion fracture under pressure. Systems built on shared meaning adapt and endure. Influence rooted in consent rather than control proves stronger across generations. This is seduction elevated to wisdom. As Greene brings his exploration full circle, the reader is left with a powerful internal shift. Seduction is no longer about conquest or validation. It becomes a form of presence with purpose. You cultivate depth, mystery, empathy, and restraint, not to manipulate outcomes, but to move through the world with intentional grace. The final quiet lesson settles in almost unnoticed. When you no longer need to seduce, you become most seductive of all. When your life is aligned, your boundaries intact, and your values clear, influence flows naturally. You attract without chasing. You inspire without demanding. You lead without enslaving.
And in that state, seduction ceases to be an art you practice and becomes a byproduct of who you are. At its deepest level, the art of seduction resolves into a question not of tactics but of identity. After understanding desire, attention, power, ethics, and restraint, the final transformation is internal. How does one live seductively without becoming false, manipulative, or hollow? Greene's final current flows toward embodiment, the point where influence stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Seduction, when integrated properly, becomes alignment. Your words, presence, timing, and silence begin to harmonize because they arise from clarity rather than need. Need repels, alignment attracts. The modern world constantly pressures individuals to perform, to brand themselves, to shout for attention, to manufacture desire. Greene quietly dismantles this impulse by revealing a counterintuitive truth. The most magnetic people are not trying to be magnetic. This is why desperation is always the enemy of seduction. When you need validation, approval, or control, your actions leak urgency. Others may not consciously identify it, but they feel it. Desire recoils from pressure. Greene echoes an ancient Taoist principle expressed by Lao Tzu: he who grasps loses. Seduction thrives in spaciousness, not force. In practice, this means cultivating a life that is already rich before inviting others into it. The seductive individual has rhythm, periods of engagement followed by withdrawal, not as a trick, but as a natural extension of self-respect. In relationships, this looks like presence without clinging. In business, it appears as confidence without overpromotion. In leadership, it manifests as authority without intimidation. Modern examples reinforce this principle. In entrepreneurship, founders who obsessively chase investors often fail, while those deeply focused on building value attract capital organically. In creative industries, artists who create from inner necessity rather than audience approval tend to leave lasting legacies. In personal life, the individuals we find most compelling are those who are comfortable in solitude and therefore generous in connection. Greene also brings attention to time as a seductive force. Patience signals power. When you are not rushed, others assume you are in demand. In an era of instant gratification, the ability to wait, to let moments ripen, feels almost supernatural. This applies globally, across cultures and systems. Nations that sacrifice long-term stability for short-term applause weaken themselves. Leaders who resist impulsive reactions often outlast those who dominate headlines. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche observed, "All credibility, all good conscience, all evidence of truth come only from the senses." Seduction works the same way. People believe not what you say, but what they experience around you. Your consistency, emotional regulation, and calm under pressure become persuasive without argument. Another vital dimension emerges here: self-seduction. Before you can inspire others, you must be in relationship with yourself. Greene implies that many people fail at influence because they are internally divided, projecting confidence while harboring resentment, offering charm while craving control. This inner fracture creates dissonance that others instinctively distrust. Self-seduction means crafting a life you respect, honoring your values, refining your taste, choosing depth over noise. When you admire your own standards, others sense it. This is not arrogance, it is coherence, and coherence is irresistibly attractive. From an American perspective, this lesson challenges the culture of relentless self-promotion. From a global perspective, it resonates with traditions that value quiet mastery, Japanese aesthetics of restraint, African communal wisdom emphasizing presence, European philosophies that privilege depth over display. Across civilizations, the conclusion is the same. True influence is subtle, slow, and earned. Greene closes not with instruction, but with implication. Seduction is not a mask to wear, it is a mirror. It reflects how well you understand human nature and how honestly you engage with it. Those who misuse it become isolated, mistrusted, and eventually exposed. Those who respect it become quietly indispensable. The final philosophical echo belongs to Socrates: know thyself. Without self-knowledge, seduction becomes manipulation. With it, seduction becomes connection. And connection, real, mutual, dignifying connection, is the rarest and most powerful force in human affairs. In the end, the art of seduction does not teach you how to control others. It teaches you how to become someone others want to be near, not because they are compelled, but because they are awakened. That is the highest form of power. That is seduction completed. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and join us for more wisdom that fuels growth.